Welcome to Sacred Stories. Today, we're exploring a story that's not just the account of the first murder in humanity's history, but a deep reflection on human nature, the choice between good and evil, and the fate of souls in light of their own flaws and decisions. We're talking about Cain and Abel, two brothers who, under the same parentage and the same teachings, took such different paths that they ultimately changed the course of human history forever. Cain, the first person to succumb to the sin of envy, committed the first murder, killing his own brother. But why did this happen? What led to this tragic act of violence and destruction? The family context and the post-Eden world. After Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, the world they entered was drastically different from the peaceful, harmonious paradise they had known. Now, they found themselves in a world marked by hard work, hardships, and pain. The earth, once fertile and generous, now became difficult and resistant, a direct consequence of sin that separated them from God. Amid this scenario, Adam and Eve began to form a new family, becoming the first parents of humanity. They had two sons, Cain, the firstborn, who became a farmer. Cain represented the attempt to control and work with the land, a reflection of humanity that now had to struggle to survive. As the first son, he also bore the responsibility of being the first to work and deal with the fruits of life outside Eden. Abel, the second son, who became a shepherd. Abel, with his flock, represented a more immediate relationship with creation and living beings, living in direct contact with the care and protection of animals. Both Cain and Abel grew up under the same education and in the same adverse conditions. They knew that, after the fall, their relationship with God now depended on their capacity for worship. As the children of Adam and Eve, they had the privilege of being the first to present their offerings before God. However, the way each approached God and the type of sacrifice they offered revealed the state of their hearts. The sacrifice of Cain and Abel, the meaning of the offering. The Bible tells us that both brothers decided to make an offering to God, a symbolic act of reverence and devotion. However, what seemed like a simple act of worship turned into the first great conflict in human history, a reflection of the inner motivations of each. Abel, being a shepherd, brought God the best of his flock, the firstborn of his sheep, meaning the best and healthiest lambs. It wasn't just the act of sacrificing an animal, but the demonstration that he was offering God the best of all he had. Abel's choice reflects an attitude of sincere faith, where he gave his best in gratitude and trust in God. In doing so, Abel expressed his willingness to submit the best of his work and life to God, believing that his obedience would be accepted. Cain, on the other hand, brought the fruits of the land he cultivated, but the Bible doesn't specify that he chose the best or the most valuable ones. The way Cain's offering is described suggests that he didn't bring the best he had, but merely enough or what was at hand. This could indicate a lack of zeal or a divided heart, where the sacrifice wasn't made with sincerity, but with a more routine or even selfish attitude. Cain didn't seem willing to offer the best, but whatever was convenient, perhaps hoping that his offering would be sufficient just because it was material. So why did God reject Cain's offering and accept Abel's? The answer lies in what God values. More than the offering itself, God looks at the heart of the one making the offering. In Hebrews 11 verse 4, it said that, by faith Abel offered to God a better sacrifice than Cain, showing us that Abel's faith and sincerity were key for his offering to be accepted. Cain, on the other hand, didn't demonstrate the same willingness or faith, and his offering was not seen by God as genuine. The fratricide, the tragic act of the first murder. The Bible recounts that, after God confronted Cain, his heart was consumed by jealousy and anger toward his brother Abel. The rejection of his offering, in contrast to the acceptance of Abel's, awakened in him a deep sense of inferiority and wounded pride. These feelings drove him to make a tragic decision. Cain suggested to Abel that they go out into the field, a remote place, far from anyone's presence. The biblical text is direct and impactful, and Cain said to Abel his brother, "Let us go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Genesis 4 verse 8. This moment marks the first murder in human history. Abel, an innocent and righteous man, was murdered by his own brother, not because of anything he did, but because of Cain's inability to deal with his own jealousy and rejection. The murder of Abel was not merely an act of physical violence, it represented the breaking of family bonds and the manifestation of sin in its most destructive form. The field, which should have been a place of labor and sustenance, became a scene of blood and tragedy. Important reflection: the story of Cain and Abel shows us that sin, when left unchecked, not only affects the individual but also those around them. Jealousy and envy, fueled by the refusal to face the truth, can lead to extremes that destroy lives and relationships. God's judgment, the cry of Abel's blood. After the murder, God again confronted Cain, this time with a question that echoes as a judgment: "Where is Abel, your brother?" Genesis 4 verse 9. Cain's response reflects his defiance and disrespect: "I do not know, am I my brother's keeper?" This answer not only demonstrates Cain's attempt to avoid guilt but also reveals his hardened heart. He had not only committed a horrific act but also tried to deny responsibility, disregarding the familial bond and the consequences of his actions. Then, God declared, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." Genesis 4 verse 10. This statement is deeply symbolic. Abel's blood, spilled on the soil, not only stains the earth but cries out for justice. God makes it clear that Abel's life was not forgotten and that his death demands accountability. This cry is a demonstration that God is just and does not overlook suffering or injustice. As a consequence, God pronounced judgment on Cain: "Now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Genesis 4 verses 11 to 12. The earth, which had already been difficult to cultivate, would now become completely unyielding for Cain. He would no longer have a fixed place and would be condemned to wander the world as a fugitive. This punishment reflects Cain's disconnection not only from his family but also from creation itself, a direct consequence of his choice. The mark of Cain: mercy and consequence. Faced with God's judgment, Cain responded with despair: "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Genesis 4 verses 13 to 14. Cain feared that his status as a fugitive would make him vulnerable to others seeking revenge. Despite his guilt, he acknowledged the weight of his punishment and the difficulty of living isolated and rejected. At this moment, God demonstrated an act of surprising mercy. Although Cain had committed a terrible sin, God did not abandon him completely. He declared, "Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." Genesis 4 verse 15. God placed a mark on Cain, a visible sign that would guarantee his protection against those who might try to kill him. Although the Bible does not specify what this mark was, it symbolizes God's care even for a condemned sinner. This act of mercy reinforces that God does not desire destruction but that even the most lost individuals have the chance to reflect on their actions and seek redemption. Important reflection: the mark of Cain reminds us that even in the midst of sin's consequences, God still offers a measure of protection and an opportunity for repentance. He does not ignore sin but is also not quick to destroy those who fail. This demonstrates the balance between divine justice and his mercy. The story of Cain and Abel is not merely a narrative of tragedy and pain, it serves as a profound warning about human nature and the consequences of our choices. Despite taking place thousands of years ago, this story resonates with lessons that are still relevant today. God looks at the heart. More than external actions, God values the intentions and sincerity of the heart. Abel's offering was accepted because it reflected genuine faith and devotion, while Cain's was rejected due to his lack of commitment and humility. This reminds us that true worship is not just about what we do but about the attitude with which we do it. The danger of envy and pride: Cain allowed envy and pride to consume him, leading to the first murder in history. God's warning to Cain: "Sin is crouching at your door, it desires to have you, but you must rule over it," teaches us to be vigilant over our emotions and not let them control us. The consequences of sin. Cain's act not only resulted in Abel's death but also brought isolation, guilt, and a curse that affected his entire life. This shows us that poor choices can have lasting consequences, not only for us but for those around us. God's justice and mercy. Even after Cain's sin, God did not destroy him. He punished Cain but also protected him with a mark symbolizing mercy and the opportunity for repentance. This reminds us that God is just but also merciful, always willing to offer a chance for redemption. Responsibility for others. Cain's question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" challenges us to reflect on our role in caring for those around us. We are called to love, protect, and take responsibility for one another rather than allowing envy and competition to drive us apart. The story of Cain and Abel invites us to look inward. What kind of heart are we offering to God? How do we handle our emotions and relationships? Learning from Cain's mistakes can help us build a life aligned with values of faith, humility, and love. Presenter, in a reflective tone, may the story of Cain and Abel inspire us to seek a pure heart before God, to master our emotions before they master us, and to care for one another with love and responsibility. Thank you for watching Sacred Stories. May your journey be marked by choices that bring life and peace. See you next time.